Puka, Bella, I'm sure you've noticed some changes.
Who are you talking to?
I'm just practicing for when I have to tell the dogs about the twins. You know, because they'll...
Be fine in the spacious third row seat.
But the twins...
Can sleep peacefully thanks to the rear manual sunshade.
And what about the...
Extra cargo space for strollers and dog beds?
I guess you're right.
Can we go to the hospital now? The contractions are getting closer.
The three-row Lexus TX, because everyone should feel like the center of the universe. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
This is the Michael K. Show podcast.
I gotta get more K.
Listen live weekdays at 1 on 880 ESPN, the ESPN New York app, and your smart speaker.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is indeed the Michael K. Show. We thank you for joining us on this Thursday. It's January 16, 2025. A lot of stuff to talk about. We'll talk about the Knicks' overtime win over the Sixers. Herculean effort by Josh Hart. Another triple-double for him. Played every second of the game. They won the game without Karl Anthony Towns. So the next up for the Knicks will be the Timberwolves tomorrow at the Garden. The Rangers play tonight. The hot stove continues to be cold. Pete Alonso news continues to drip out. We'll get to all of it, obviously. We're going to talk to Frank Isola about the basketball. And we will talk to Buster Only, our good buddy, about what's happening and what's not happening in the world of baseball, particularly when it comes to the Mets' Pete Alonso. But today, I'm sad. I was scrolling through social media as I was prepping for the show, and all of a sudden, a message popped up from the Milwaukee Brewers that the great Bob Uecker had passed away at the age of 90. And, as I put on X at the time, what a guy, what a life. I mean, what a life that Bob Uecker had. But he was one of those people, and I know this is such a cliche, but it does fit for him. You never thought that he wouldn't be here. He was just so full of joy and life, and he made people around him feel comfortable, and he made people around him feel happy and safe, and they were laughing. He was just such a natural entertainer. He could spin a story with anybody. I mean, how many broadcasters regularly appeared on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and broke Johnny Carson every single time? His deadpan delivery. How many broadcasters got to be a star of a sitcom? Mr. Belvedere. How many? The answer is none other than Bob Uecker. He had the great Miller Lite commercial. I'm in the front row. Must be in the front row. Every time the Yankees went to Milwaukee, the best part of going to that ballpark was you knew you were going to see Bob Uecker. And we got one final chance this year. His family just released a statement that since 2003 he was battling small cell lung cancer, and he battled and finally lost that battle earlier today. But you would walk into the Milwaukee radio booth, and he would automatically greet you like you were his best friend in the world. I remember the last time I walked in when the Yankees were in town in 2024, I held out my hand and I said, "How you doing, Mr. Uecker?" "Stop, Mr. Uecker, stop. It's Bob. It's Bob." And he made you comfortable. And I said, "Well, it's just a sign of respect." And he said, "Respect me and call me Bob." And the thing that made me laugh the most, a couple of years before that, when we were in Milwaukee, and we're in the elevator going down after a game, and Uecker was waiting in the elevator. I mean, he was royalty with Milwaukee and the Brewer organization. He was as important, if not more important, than any player who ever suited up for the Milwaukee Brewers. And we're in the elevator waiting to go down to the clubhouse level, and John Sterling is making his way from the booth into the elevator. And Uecker goes, "Come on, kid, let's go." Only Uecker, then at the age of 88. And John Sterling, then at the age of 84. Only Uecker could call Sterling kid. And it fit. It fit. Movie actor with Major League. I mean, we've lost one of the giants, not just in baseball, but in entertainment. And there was something very special about Uecker and the Milwaukee Brewers in that he was a broadcaster, but he was clearly a member of the team. Those players on the Brewers absolutely loved him. If you see any clubhouse celebrations over the years with the Milwaukee Brewers clinching this or that, Bob Uecker is in the middle, jumping around, laughing, having champagne poured over his head. All the managers loved him. All the players loved him. He was a confidant. When they were doing great, he'd come over and give them a backslap. And when they were struggling, he put an arm around them. He'd be their confessor. They could tell him anything. He never betrayed them because he was a member of the Milwaukee Brewers. Really emotional statement put out by former Commissioner Bud Selig, who was Uecker's friend for over 50 years. He said there wasn't a day that went by that they didn't talk and share stories and laughs. A day with Uecker was a day that made you smile. I didn't know him that well. I just knew him that, when the Yankees went into town. But he acted like I was his friend. And that's how he made everybody feel. Everybody was Bob Uecker's friend. He made everybody feel comfortable. The booth in Milwaukee State, in whatever it's called now, American Family Life Stadium, it was like a gathering place. He'd have food on a big table in the back and a refrigerator where you could have soda, and after the game you could have beer. I mean, it was the gathering place on the broadcast level for the Milwaukee Brewers. There will never, ever be another one like him. Because now, as we move forward and players have more of an outlet that they can create themselves with social media and podcasts and things like that, there's more of a disconnect between the broadcasters and the players. It's not like you're a member of the team. But Bob Uecker was the last of that breed. He was a member of the Brewers. He was not their broadcaster. He was a Milwaukee Brewer. And I think that was so special, and it fit Milwaukee so well, and it fit the Brewers so well. And I'm again, not a close friend. Just whenever we saw each other, we talked for a while, and he made you laugh. But I'm going to miss him. I'm going to miss him. That was the best part of going into that ballpark, was to see that man and to talk to him. And the things that he did. I mean, his turn is, I think it was Harry Denton. That was the name of the announcer in Major League. Unbelievable. He was just so innately funny. He had a timing and a delivery that was the timing and the delivery of a professional comedian. His deadpan delivery on the Carson show. I mean, if you have time today, go on social media and check out some of his appearances. Laugh out loud funny. There aren't that many people that made Johnny Carson laugh like that. That's why he kept coming back. That's why he got a sitcom. That's why he got a major role in a movie. I mean, he was one of the biggest parts of that movie. Just a bit outside. I love the guy. I love the guy. America loved the guy. And I'll tell you what, Milwaukee lost one of its own today. And it's so sad. It is so, so sad. Nobody goes forever. But if you ever met Uecker and you ever spoke to Uecker, you never pictured a world where he wouldn't be around, calling Milwaukee games, making you laugh, making you feel comfortable, and making you feel like you were one of his buddies. And every member, every 26 players on that Brewer team felt that he was one of their friends. He was not a broadcaster. He was not us against them. He was them. He was one of us. How rare is that to be, a member of a fraternity of broadcasters and a member of a fraternity of baseball players? Now, he was a baseball player, and he certainly undersold his playing career. He made light of it, and that was really the crux of what he did on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Always making light. How do you catch a knuckleball? You chase it down after it stops rolling. Stuff like that. So even when he was a player, he was hilarious. There was a team picture when he was with the Cardinals. He and Bob Gibson were holding hands. They didn't see it until it actually was published. And the club was red hot. And the two of them are smiling in the picture, holding hands. And if you knew Bob Gibson, he was a tough dude. And, for Uecker to get him to do that shows you how he was accepted by the players on his own team as well. And they both fined a couple of $100, which at the time was a lot. But he made people smile. He made people laugh. And that's the most important thing. How many people get to have that as their on their headstone? They could actually just say he made people laugh. Now, when Uecker passed away today, I said, I've got to talk to Bob Costas, because Bob's going to be able to put into perspective how special somebody like Uecker was, and Bob's nice enough to join us now. Bob, thank you so much for coming on the show, and I know that you knew Uecker very well, and my condolences to you as well.
He was one of a kind, and even that understates it. What I think people who only know him on a national basis might not fully appreciate is how good a radio play-by-play man he was, even if he never said anything funny, even without the Mr. Baseball persona. His calls were electric, and his relationship with that Milwaukee and that Wisconsin audience, which was built over half a century, was something really special. You understand this, Michael. It's especially true in baseball. The local announcer has a relationship with the audience that no national announcer could possibly have, no matter how good that national announcer is. And it's more true in baseball than it is in any other sport because of the day-in, day-out nature of it. And even though Uecker made a career out of poking fun at what an inept player he was, supposedly, lifetime batting average 200 and all the rest, the fact that he was a player endeared him to the Brewers players. They considered him one of them. He often pitched batting practice in uniform well into his 70s. He loved being in the clubhouse. He had his own locker in the clubhouse. When the Brewers made the playoffs, they voted him a full share, which, of course, he then in turn sent to charity. But he had a deeper relationship. Even a guy like Jack Buck, for example, or Vin Scully, respected and beloved, or Ernie Harwell, anyone you want to name, beloved by the players and by everyone around the team. Somehow with Uecker, it was more than that. The players considered him one of them, and then almost incidentally, the team's radio announcer.
It is amazing, Bob, because that just doesn't happen. I mean, you could be around for a long time. You could be there 30 years. You could be there 20 years. You could do every single game on the radio. And there's always a separation of power. But with him, there wasn't. He really was the 27th man on that team, which is amazing. Even at the age of 90 this past season, they looked at him as one of them.
No question about it. And until fairly recently, he used to hang around with these guys. He used to ride motorcycles with Robin Yount and hang around with Raleigh Fingers. I guess that's a generation or two ago, but it still makes the point that you're getting to. He was one of the guys who just happened to be a terrific announcer and a terrific personality. It was some 100 appearances with Johnny Carson. The major league films would really be nothing without him, taking nothing away from anyone else who was in those films. He tied it all together, and he had all the funniest lines in those films, half of which he ad-libbed on the spot.
I didn't know that, really. Oh, he was just genuinely funny.
Oh, my gosh, was he funny. And, you've probably heard this story. If he liked you and trusted you, he would sometimes do, midweek game, nothing much going on, a parallel broadcast using the cough button. So let's say I'm in the booth standing behind him, and he's calling the game. And he would say one thing to the audience, and then he would say hysterically funny, often off-color stuff by hitting the cough button in between pitches. So it'd be like, here's Joe Jones, a popular former MVP, swinging a foul back to the screen. Fat, overrated SOB. Here's the next pitch. And I said to him one time, Uecker, what if you miss the button? What if there's a foul up and the wires get crossed? What the hell? What are they going to do? Put me in baseball jail?
Now, is it true that you flew to Milwaukee in September to do a couple of innings with him?
I did.
How was that?
I had a pretty good sense that this would be his last season in the booth. I knew that his health was failing, and so I went up on the last weekend of the regular season, and every time I was in Milwaukee for the baseball network or whatever, Uke and I would always get together for a few innings. Sometimes we'd bring him into the TV booth, and other times I'd join him in the radio booth. And we had a little shtick that we did. We even did it in spring training if I happened to be in Arizona. I just thought we should reprise that one more time. And he only did about 30 or 35 games this year. He really wasn't up to it. He didn't make a big deal out of it. He never wanted sympathy and didn't want to call attention to himself. But he seldom did a day game after a night game. It was just getting to be too difficult for him this past year. So I flew in on a Saturday. We did 4 or 5 innings together on Saturday night. And then I spent Sunday with him and his wife Judy at his home, and we had lunch together. And I kind of thought that would be the last time I'd see him in person, although we stayed in touch with each other, as we always had, mostly through texts. And the way we texted, Michael, was that I don't know how this started or which one of us started it, but we would always sign the text with the name of some player from the 50s and 60s, and it couldn't be a star player. So I'd sign off with, talk to you soon, Bob Savarine. And he'd send back, take care, Willie Tasby, or something like that. Just, I don't know why the hell we did it, but we did it.
I said this before you came on. I mean, how many people in baseball, I burst out laughing when it happened. We were in the elevator waiting to go down. This was about 4 years ago in Milwaukee, and we were waiting on John Sterling, and Uke was in the back of the elevator, and Uke just yells out, "Come on, kid!" And I'm saying, who can call John Sterling kid? And it was Uke. It was Uke.
True.
Oh, man, that was something. He's something else.
He was absolutely amazing. And, he had his little stories that became kind of part of his act. And if you want to just have another laugh, and you've probably seen this, Michael, go to YouTube. I'm saying this for the benefit of your listeners. Go to YouTube and look up his Hall of Fame speech from, I think, 2003. And look at how all the Hall of Famers behind him, seated behind him, are just convulsed in laughter as he tells all these stories. But on top of that, he could be spontaneously funny. And I know this will resonate with you and a New York audience. This is sometime in the 90s, and the Yankees are playing Texas in the postseason, and the game is on NBC. So it's me, Joe Morgan, and Uke. And it's one of the first 2 games of the series at Yankee Stadium, and it's a tight game, late innings, and the director starts taking tight shots of faces to try and emphasize the tension of the moment. So I pick up on what he's doing, and all I say is the last name of the player or manager. And there's probably 8 to 10 of these little cuts. So I'm going Palmer, Jeter, Torrey, Oates. And then when it ends, there's a shot of a perfect full moon over the Bronx. And only then does Uecker speak. And he says, Don Zimmer. How great is that?
Oh, he had such a timing, like a professional comedian. He was amazing.
Yes.
And so deadpan,
there were the deadpan and his face.
Yes.
The face and the deadpan just added to it. He created a persona. And so whatever he said was funnier still because people knew what the persona was. And many people, including Johnny Carson, many people in show business said that Uke was one of the funniest people they ever met and that his timing was that of a terrific comedian.
So sad. And Bob, if you hear the last words that he ever said, and now with him gone, on the air when the Mets beat the Brewers in that heartbreaking walk, he just sounded so sad, and I guess he knew, you knew obviously that he was ill, and I guess he knew that was the last game he was ever going to do, and boy, it just sounds different now.
Two things about that. It was a crushing defeat for the Brewers, yes, but there's no doubt that Uke had a sense that this was the end for him, and also at that point you could tell a local audience will always give grace to their guy. But at that point, he was not the same on the air. and the words didn't come to him as readily as they once did, and his voice was not as strong. So it's especially poignant. I heard that broadcast back then, and there was so much implied and so much that you thought about if you knew him and as a person as well as a broadcaster. So much in that moment. It was really poignant.
You know, you hate to say this when people pass away because I hate the sound of this, but boy, what a full life.
Yes.
He squeezed every last bit of juice out of life. I mean, how many people could say that?
He would have been 91 in 10 days. And what a life he led. Not a life without heartache. He had 4 children. One, Bob Jr., is still very much with us and was at his bedside along with his wife, Judy, and other members of his family. He died at home. He had hospice care. But another son, Steve, died of cancer only in his 50s. And more recently, one of his 2 daughters, Leanne, died of ALS only 2 or 3 years ago. Uecker didn't like to talk about that publicly, and he compartmentalized it and went on about his life. But if you think he was just, the jolly, hail fellow, well met, there was heartache in his life, but he dealt with it.
Bob, thank you so much for sharing some thoughts about Uecker. I appreciate it. It's a rough day for all of us that knew him and for the baseball world. He was that kind of special, but we thank you for coming on.
Yeah, he sure was. This is said all the time. It's a cliche, but in this case it applies. There will never be another like him.
Yeah, one of a kind, one of one. Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Michael.
All right. That's Bob Costas with some memories of Bob Uecker, who passed away today at the age of 90. When I saw him, I did not know he was ill. I mean, he looked terrific. He looked terrific. But obviously, those that were close to him knew that he was slowing down. And I didn't get a chance to listen to him that much as a broadcaster, except in the national games when I was growing up. But he did not show any of us that he was in a weakened state at all. And he made sure to be there for those Yankee games, that's for sure. So Bob Uecker leaves us this day at the age of 90. We're going to talk to Brian Anderson, who's the television voice of the Brewers. That'll be in the 2 o'clock hour. So you'll definitely want to stay tuned for that, as Brian knew him as well as anybody and was a young broadcaster who, was there with Uecker every single day. We're going to talk to Frank Isola in just a moment of the S Network. He has his own show on Sirius XM as well. About last night's Knicks win, as the Knicks win 125-119. They blew a big lead. They blew a lead at the end when Jalen Brunson was a little bit sloppy with the ball, so that allowed the Sixers to tie it. Sixers didn't have both of their centers yesterday, but Maxey is such a special player. He kept the Sixers in it where they tied it, but the Knicks did not wilt in overtime. They came out, big shot, big dunk by OG Anunoby, and they went from there. And they did that without Karl Anthony Towns, who does have a bone chip on his thumb, but he's going to play through it. Once the swelling goes down, not sure if he's going to be able to play against his former team, the Timberwolves, tomorrow at the Garden, but we shall see. And if you're a basketball fan, wow, the Nets just got embarrassed last night. Just embarrassed by the Clippers. They did. And I know they're tanking, but it is a season in their history. It's a season that will go down in the record books, and you're not going to lose those losses. That's a dumb way to say it, but those losses don't go away. And, when you get in the lottery of the NBA, you could have the worst record in the league and still not get the number 1 pick and get Cooper Flagg. And I think the coach is doing the best that he can, but they rest so many people and because of injuries and things like that, and you wonder how much of it is legitimate. They better prove that it's legitimate or the NBA won't like it, but the team they rolled out there yesterday is just dreadful. Just dreadful. They get embarrassed. They almost lost by 60 points. And that's a product that somebody's paying for. People went to the Intuit Dome and they paid for that game. That's kind of not fair either. And on the flip side of that, on Friday at the Garden tomorrow, should be a dandy. I hope that Karl Anthony Towns is going to play. Andy Martino, our buddy who was with us yesterday, he's reporting that the Mets are bringing back Jesse Winker, pending a physical, according to league sources. So they make a move to continue to build their team. Still waiting on the Alonso situation. We'll talk with Buster Olney about that at 2:30. But Frank Isola will join us in just a moment, so stay tuned for that. Get ready to emulate your game this NFL playoff season with FanDuel, because right now all customers can get a no-sweat NFL same-game parlay for any game. Just place a 3-leg NFL same-game parlay, and you'll get bonus bets back if your bet doesn't win. Same-game parlays are the perfect way to combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payday. Build your own or choose from one of the popular SGPs pre-built for you in FanDuel's top-rated sportsbook app. So what are you waiting for? Get your no-sweat same-game parlay on America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/K. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. 21 plus, physically present in New York, opt-in required. Refund issued as a non-withdrawable bonus bet that expires 7 days after receipt. Max wager $5 unless otherwise specified. Restrictions apply, including token expiration. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369.
Harry Douglas here, and if you're constantly on the go like I am, then earbuds are a priority. That's why you need Technique's new noise-canceling AZ80s. Like you, these buds work as hard as they play. You'll get Technique's legendary high-res audio, along with state-of-the-art noise cancellation, so you can stay in your zone. Visit us.techniques.com/sports to shop for AZ80s now. That's us.technics.com/sports.
There's one thing that will forever change the way you sleep, and it's the softest 100% organic cotton bedding from Boll & Branch. You'll fall asleep faster, wrapped in the most luxurious comfort. You'll never sleep hot again with airy blankets, cloud-like duvets, and breathable sheets. You'll experience pure comfort on night 1 and feel your bedding get softer with every wash. Discover the difference with 15% off your first order at bollandbranch.com with code SPORTS15. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
What makes a great pair of glasses? At Warby Parker, it's all the invisible extras without the extra cost. Their designer quality frames start at $95, including prescription lenses, plus scratch-resistant, smudge-resistant, and anti-reflective coatings, and UV protection, and free adjustments for life. To find your next pair of glasses, sunglasses, or contact lenses, or to find the Warby Parker store nearest you, head over to warbyparker.com. That's warbyparker.com.
Thanks for listening to the Michael K. Show podcast.
He's been here a long time, and he's going to be here even longer.
Catch the show on demand whenever you want. Just subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Knicks with a win yesterday, Nets with an embarrassing loss, and let's bring in our good friend, basketball expert, works with the Yes Network, has his own show on Sirius XM, and that is Frank Isola. Frankie, how you doing?
Michael, how you doing? How's all that free time you're getting in the afternoon working out? Is it good?
You know what? I like it. Spending time with the kids and the wife. It's nice. I do like it.
Nice.
But I miss Don and Peter, but I do like it.
Yeah, you've kind of earned it, I guess. You've been working for a bit.
A little bit.
5 years. You put in 5 solid years in the business. You
know what?
It.
That's enough, don't you think? That's just enough.
Exactly.
And, let me touch on the Nets for a moment. I understand what they're doing, and in theory, I agree with what they're doing. But they're still losing games that people are paying money to see. And, yesterday was not a representative NBA game. They didn't play hardly anybody. And I feel sorry for Jordy Fernandez, who knew what he was getting when he signed up for this. But, boy, this is tough.
Yeah, and I think, you look the night before, they won in Portland and Cam Johnson played. And right now, Cam Johnson, they have a big decision to make on him because he's a very good player. And if the Nets are thinking about maybe a quick rebuild, can they, score big in the lottery? Can they trade for a player and maybe, think of themselves as a playoff team next year? There's a lot of people that think that Cam Johnson should be part of it. So he didn't play last night because he had played the night before, because you do have the trade deadline coming up. So I think in the case of him, they're monitoring, how much he plays. But I agree with you. It's tough. Everyone says, yeah, let's rebuild, and we'll rebuild through the draft. And a lot of teams have done it. Look at Oklahoma City. Now, the big move Oklahoma City made was trading for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but they mostly built through the draft. But that means living through it. And it's not easy to live through a lot of the losing. And I think Jordy Fernandez, if you listen to him, Mike, they had a game against Denver last Friday. And they were down 22. They cut it to within 5, and they really fought hard. And after the game, Jordy Fernandez said, we didn't deserve to win this game. So he doesn't sugarcoat anything. And you could tell he's wearing these losses because his idea is, all right, whatever management wants to do, that's fine. But I know every night that we take the court, I'm trying to win. And last night really was that was the biggest egg that they've laid all season. There have been a lot of games when they've won and been competitive, but last night was a complete disaster.
And I also think that, the theory of tanking I get, but when it's a lottery and there's ping pong balls involved, I mean, you could have the worst record in the world and still not get Cooper Flag. So it's a real crapshoot to decide to go down this route.
No, you're 100% right. And I also think, just because you're in the lottery and you get a high pick, you have to pick the right player. Look at what the Golden State Warriors are going through right now. When they had a top team that was going to the finals and deep into the playoffs, they ended up getting the second overall pick, and they used that to take James Wiseman. They missed on that, much like Detroit had done years ago when they had a championship caliber team. They had the second overall pick, and they took Darko Milicic. So, yeah, just because you're in the lottery doesn't mean it's always going to work. Right now, a team that has a good chance to get the number one pick is the New Orleans Pelicans. They have the number one pick from, 6 years ago when Zion was that guy. And Zion's only played in, I think it's 190 NBA games. He's been hurt. He's never been in the playoffs yet. So you're right. Just thinking it's going to work through the lottery, and it's the same thing with the Sixers. Think about how many seasons the Philadelphia 76ers tanked. Yeah, they got Embiid. He had an MVP season one year, but they haven't even been out of the second round since they went through the process and were tanking all those years.
Let's talk about the Knicks. So they win yesterday, 125-119. They don't have Cat, and the Sixers don't have Joel Embiid. And the Sixers never have Joel Embiid. I think he's missed about 66% of their games this year. And, I sit back and I think about it, Frank. The Knicks really dodged a bullet because there were 3 guys that they were thinking about going after. They were monitoring Donovan Mitchell, Cat, and Embiid. Boy, they have to be so glad and celebrating privately that it wasn't Embiid, who's a great player, but you could be as great as you want. If you don't play, though, it doesn't mean anything.
You're 100% right. He's played 13 games this season. And, he wanted to win MVP. He got that one year. He wanted to win a gold medal. So Grant Hill, the executive director of USA Basketball, was able to recruit him to the United States national team. He does have a U.S. passport, so he was able to do that. I wonder what his motivation is. He has a huge contract that he's sitting on right now, so he's getting paid a lot of money for the next few years. But he doesn't play a lot, and he's not in shape, and that's an issue. And I find it funny kind of going into the game where every time the Knicks lose, everyone focuses on the minutes. Okay, sure. And the team that they're playing, Philadelphia, you have Embiid, who never plays. Paul George, who got hurt in the preseason, has been in and out of the lineup, and even Tyrese Maxey this year has kind of been in and out of the lineup. So we're focused on the guys that play a lot as opposed to the guys that hardly ever play, and I'd rather be the team that has 27 wins as opposed to whatever Philadelphia has right now. Is it 15 or 16 wins? And they're going to have to fight just to make the play-in tournament.
I'm glad you we're talking with our friend Frank Isola of the S Network and Sirius XM. I'm glad you brought up the minutes police because they always come out when the Knicks struggle. And the Knicks have struggled at the beginning of January. But all of us are disgusted by the fact that if you buy a ticket to a game, you have no idea if the greatest player on the other team is going to play because of load management or some sketchy injury. I mean, I'd much rather have what Tom Thibodeau is doing. And, we had on Stephen Bondi yesterday, and he said, I don't think any of the injuries that the Knicks have suffered are because he's overplayed them. Are you a guy that, like looks down your nose at everybody criticizing the fact that Thibodeau plays his guys all the time, a lot of minutes?
And I would also think, if you want to make the case, if they're up by a lot late in the game or trailing by a lot, which doesn't happen too often, and you want to take guys out the last 2 or 3 minutes, all right, that's fine. But if you look at the average minutes per game, LeBron James, who's 40, is right at the same number as Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson. Kevin Durant is actually averaging more minutes than those guys. And think about the history of injuries that Kevin Durant has had with a foot injury, and he had the torn Achilles tendon. Jason Tatum, who goes deep into the playoffs every year, has played more minutes. Even Anthony Davis is averaging more minutes than those guys. And it's funny, too, because everyone will say, well, the guys will be run down when the playoffs roll around. Okay, so last year, Donovan Mitchell missed the final 2 games against Cleveland. And I don't think Jared Allen, I don't know if he played or if he missed every playoff game of the Celtics series, but he was injured last year. Kawhi got hurt in the playoffs last year. Giannis didn't play in a playoff game. Jimmy Butler didn't play in a playoff game. They don't play for Tom Thibodeau. Guys get hurt. Right. It happens a lot during the playoffs. And even this year, Mike, think about it. In October, Paulo Banchero, one of the young stars of this league, tore an oblique muscle and was out for 34 games. He just came back. During the time that he was gone, Franz Wagner, who's another emerging star in the league, suffered the same exact injury. His brother, Mo Wagner, blew out his knee. Those are three significant injuries. Again, they don't play for the Knicks. I have no idea how many minutes per game they play, but injuries happen over the course of a season. I just find it's weird that it's the one when the Knicks won 9 in a row, no one was talking about the minutes. The minute they lose, it's, well, this guy's not playing it. He's playing too much. They should take him out. They should use this guy instead. I don't get it.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I know Hartenstein is on the shelf now with a calf injury with OKC, and I'm sure that somehow Thibodeau's going to get blamed, right?
I will say this with Hartenstein. You know that they're 22-2 with him in the lineup. He was exactly what they needed because they needed more size. But no, you're right. Listen, people are worried about muscle injuries and things of that nature. Look at Mikal Bridges. What was the stat last night? Is it 555 consecutive games that he's played?
Yep.
And he's usually the primary defender on the opposing team's top player. Now, he got smoked last week by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, outscored him 39-9, but he's played a lot of minutes in a lot of games, and he plays all the time. I just find it funny. You got 40-year-old LeBron. Look at the minutes he's playing. Same thing with Kevin Durant. Look at Tatum and Brown. And, again, they go deep into the playoffs every year. They play a lot of games. They play a lot of minutes. There are certain players, the top guys, that condition themselves to play a lot and manage to avoid injury. And I think Brunson is certainly one of those guys. I think Hart is one of those guys, and Bridges is one of those guys.
The one thing that you can say about this Knicks team, Frank, is that they don't beat the best teams. And that's a little bit of a concern. Their bench obviously is a concern because of the trades they made to make their starting lineup better. Their bench is a little weak. Can this team get good enough to actually compete with OKC this year, to compete with the Cleveland Cavaliers? Do they have it within them with what they have, or does it have to be a move that's made?
Yeah, I think getting Mitchell Robinson back will be big because there will be even times where you can play him and Karl Anthony Towns together. So you think about how big you are. And you could use that lineup too because Karl Anthony Towns is a good perimeter shooter. So I think getting him back and, of course, the emergence of McBride over the past year and a half is important. I think they can. The big issue will be, where it kind of feels like we're going to play the last half of the season knowing that Cleveland's going to finish in first, knowing that Boston should finish second, and the Knicks third. Now, could the Knicks and Boston flip-flop? I guess the way the Celtics are going right now, they're 7-7 in their last 14. That's always possible. But I think the Knicks, the road to getting to an Eastern Conference Finals could be tough because, for my money, I still think the best team in the league, the team that I would trust the most in a playoff series, would be Boston, even more so than Oklahoma City, just because Oklahoma City last year had the top seed. They ended up losing in the second round, and they're going to need Chet Holmgren and both Isaiah Hartenstein back. I think the Knicks will try to do something. Is there something available in the buyout market? Maybe there is, but I have a funny feeling this is going to be their team. I think the Knicks are banking on getting Mitchell Robinson back and hoping he can provide something.
Talking with Frank Isola here on the Michael K. Show. Before I let you go, I asked this to Lupica yesterday. I asked this to everybody with the NBA. Jimmy Butler, the situation down in Miami right now, he's demanding a trade. And I've never understood through all sports, and I've felt this for a long time, that if I was running a team and a guy was under contract and he demanded a trade, I'd say, no, you trade, you either sit and never play again or you play for us. We're not trading you. We're not acceding to your demand. Do you think that Riley will? And why don't more teams do that? You look, the Nets were destroyed because Harden demanded a trade, and then Kyrie demanded a trade, and then obviously Durant demanded, and they traded all of them. Why not say no?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that, and I think in a lot of cases these franchises are being held hostage by some of these players. I think in the case of the Nets, they kind of said no up to a point. Because remember, Kevin Durant said that right before July 1st, and they ended up not trading him until, what was it, late January, early February, and that deal was actually done kind of quietly behind the scenes. He said he wanted to go to Phoenix. They traded him to Phoenix, and the Nets got a lot back, including Mikal Bridges, which they eventually turned into more draft picks. As it relates to Jimmy Butler, here's the outrageous thing about it. If Jimmy Butler was in the final year of his contract, you would say, all right, I don't really agree with it, but I get it. Jimmy Butler feels like he's done so much for the organization. They got the 2 finals. Shouldn't they extend him a year or 2 years? Mike, he's getting a contract for next season at over $50 million.
Yep.
So the reason Jimmy Butler wants to be traded is not based on his 40+ million he's making this year or the 50+ next year. He doesn't like the fact that he doesn't have a contract for the following season when he's going to be, 36, 37. You look at his injury history. He wasn't available in the playoffs this year. It's outrageous. Even LeBron has played on one-year deals, like kind of a make-good situation. If Jimmy Butler opts into his contract, which I think he will, and he gets, I think it's about $55 million next season. And if he had a great year, I think that the Miami Heat would say, all right, we'll give you another $55 million the following season. There's nothing wrong with that. The Miami Heat have to protect themselves, and the way Jimmy Butler's handled it is a joke. And you could tell, to me, he's losing in the court of public opinion. There was a story that came out. He was upset because he wanted to meet with Pat Riley, but Pat Riley wouldn't fly to San Diego to meet with him at his house. Mike, you've been involved in a lot of contract negotiations. Your boss comes to see you, or is it the other way around? You have to see them.
Yep.
It's not even logical, some of the things, and the fact that people would actually take Jimmy Butler's side in this because he helped them get to 2 titles. No one's denying that, and he's right now, Mike. He's being compensated for it. He's getting over 40, and next year he can opt into his contract for over 50. That was the reward for doing that. He's worried about 2 years down the road. It's insane.
And you know Pat Riley, covering him, and I know Pat Riley as well. I would say that inside Pat Riley's soul, he wants to say, you could rot on the bench, we're not doing anything. But he has to think about the Miami Heat, too, because that's an asset that you could turn into something good. I don't think he's just going to trade him to trade him. He's going to trade him to a trade that he thinks that Miami Heat are going to be better.
No, he's not going to do that, and they don't want to take back Bradley Beal because Bradley Beal has a long-term contract. The best thing that could happen to them is if Jimmy Butler didn't opt into his contract, but he's obviously going to do that. He's not going to leave about $55 million on the table. That's why I think Miami's handled it the right way, and the word is out of South Florida that Mickey Arison feels we're paying Jimmy Butler. Now that his suspension is over, he's got to come back and play. I think it kind of puts the ball back in Jimmy Butler's court, who's hurt himself. I think who wants to trade for a guy who you know is under contract for next year, but he's more worried about having a contract the following season. Teams are lining up for that. Teams like Jimmy Butler, but they're also as a player, but they're worried that he may pull this with them.
Unbelievable stuff. Great stuff from you, Frank. Thank you for always coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. Good luck.
All right, be well. If you're able, please help people affected by the California wildfires in 2025. Donate at redcross.org/ESPN to help the Red Cross respond and help people recover. All right, we've done a lot of talk in the first 40-some-odd minutes of the show. Now let's hear from you. You're the co-host of the show. 1-800-919-3776. Again, the number, 1-800-919-3776. We talk with you next right here on The K Show on 880 ESPN.
So it's a new year, 2025, and you're thinking, how am I going to make this year different? How am I going to build something for myself? The best time to start your new business is right now, and Shopify is how you're going to make it happen. Shopify makes it simple to create your brand, open for business, and get your first sale. Get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates. No coding or design skills required. All you need to do is drag and drop. Their powerful social media tools let you connect all your channels and create shoppable posts and help you sell everywhere people scroll. Shopify makes it easy to manage your growing business. They help with the details like shipping, taxes, and payments from one single dashboard, allowing you to focus on the important stuff, like growing your business. What happens if you don't act now? Will you regret it? What if someone beats you to the idea? Don't kick yourself when you hear this again in a year because you didn't do anything now. With Shopify, your first sale is closer than you think. Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/network, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/network to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/network.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Grainger knows space at your facility is limited. As a maintenance specialist, you only have so many spots for backup products in your inventory roster, which means space on your bench comes at a premium. Well, when it comes to breadth and depth, Grainger's got you covered. They've got over 1 million industrial-grade products. Plus, fast delivery helps reduce the inventory you need to keep on hand, freeing up space and capital while giving your operation a winning edge. Call 1-800-GRANGER, click Granger.com, or just stop by a local branch.
Thanks for listening to the Michael K. Show podcast.
He's been here a long time, and he's going to be here even longer.
Catch the show on demand whenever you want. Just subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts.
Eye-opening story from Andrew Bogish. Fordham is suspending men's basketball coach Keith Ergo for apparent recruiting violations. So it's a self-imposed 4-game suspension with Fordham suspending Keith Ergo. Really weird. Fordham lost a heartbreaker yesterday, 3 overtimes in the 100th anniversary game at Rose Hill to UMass. And then this. They're having a rough season, and now Ergo, who's a good guy, I mean, he really works his butt off for that university and the team. He gets suspended 4 games for recruiting violations. I mean, in a world where you can outwardly pay players, how could you actually have a violation of recruiting? You can pay players. There's no more under-the-table stuff. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Really unbelievable. 1-800-919-3776. We go to Miguel in Lakewood. Miguel, what's up?
Hey, Michael, how you doing?
I'm good. How about
Mike,
you?
Great. Do you remember, I know you listen to Howard Stern all the time, and I remember one time Artie Lang was telling a story, and Norm Macdonald was in the studio, and they were telling a story about how they went to visit Bob Uecker, and Bob Uecker would do what Costas was talking about. He'd hit that cough button.
Right.
And in between the takes, he would say that some of the nastiest things. And I was just wondering if he ever did that around you.
Obviously I never got to sit there and watch his broadcast, Miguel, because I'm on the air at the same time. But, he was very mad at Norm Macdonald, the late Norm Macdonald, for saying, the stuff that he said when he felt comfortable around somebody and was friends with somebody. He'd make off-color remarks. And, he wanted people to love him, obviously, and he wanted his friends to laugh. So when Norm kind of betrayed that trust, Bob Uecker was pretty unhappy. Yeah, but I've heard that story for sure. And then, if you didn't get a chance to hear Bob Costas earlier, you should listen on the podcast. He was great. And we're going to have Brian Anderson, the longtime television voice of the Milwaukee Brewers. He's going to come on at about 10 minutes after 2 in the next hour. Let's go to Joe in Staten Island. Joe.
Michael, for taking my call. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Thanks, man.
I'm a big basketball fan. By the way, I'm the caller who called you about OKC and the Knicks, saying they were going to beat them by 10, they beat them by 30, whatever. But my question to you is if you could settle this debate between me and my friend. I say out of all the sports, basketball is not a team sport. You need 3 to 4 stars. Like I think Oklahoma City's the best team, but they're not going to win it all because they don't have star power that the Celtics have. So I just feel like it's just not a team sport.
I hope that you took the side that it is a team sport because it is very much a team sport. Moving the basketball, sharing the basketball, defensive schemes where you have to know what the other guy's doing. I mean, of all the major sports, the one sport to me that I can make the argument is so totally not a team sport is baseball. Baseball is the one thing where a player could be selfish, and for the most part, he's helping his team. Like people said, well, Tony Gwynn was a selfish player. All he wanted to do was hit. Wade Boggs was a selfish player. All he wanted to do was hit. Okay. So if they hit 330 or 340 and won a batting title, you know what? They help their team win. It's not like you have to pass the ball to them. It's not like you have to block for them. It's not like hockey where obviously you have to go down the ice and find the open skater and stuff like that. All of those are more team sports. Basketball's definitely a team sport. By no stretch of the imagination can you say it's not a team sport. Only one sport, other than like tennis and golf. Those are the antithesis of a team sport. But with a team, a sport with a team, baseball's not a team sport. Because everybody could be selfish. A pitcher could be out there wanting to strike out everybody. You know what? Helps the team. Helps the team. Now, in the old days, baseball was more of a team sport where you had to move runners over, sacrifice yourself. That doesn't happen anymore. That's not the way the sport is. You hardly ever bunt. You don't give up a bat by hitting to the right side. Very few do that. So that takes the team sport aspect out of it. Just do as well as you could do personally, and you will help the team. Hey, here he is, Richard in Manhattan. Richard.
Michael, Bob Uecker. Now, I got to correct you. There was one guy broadcaster identified with his team similar, and you'll agree with me when I mention him. Tommy Heinsohn. He's as close as you can get to a Bob Uecker.
Yeah, but he wasn't the play-by-play guy. I would agree with you, Richard, but he was the color guy.
Yeah, and he was a funny guy, and he was great. My mother even loved Tommy Heinsohn when he was the coach of the Celtics. He had some antics on the sideline when he was their coach. Anyway, Michael, I can still see my 1963 Topps baseball card collection. Milwaukee Braves, Bob Uecker, and next to Bob Uecker, I had Tito Francona with a large wad of chewing tobacco in his cheek. Anyway, now Uecker came to the Cardinals in '64. Torre beat him out. Joe Torre was the catcher for the Braves. But Uecker always said the reason he took so long to get to the major leagues was he was a goofball even in the minor leagues. Charlie Dressen was the Milwaukee Braves manager at that time, and he didn't like Uecker. He said, I don't want any he was a clown back then. He said, I don't want any clowns. But do you know the one guy on that '64 Cardinal team that beat the Yankees who loved Uecker, and they gave him a lot of credit for winning the World Series? Bob Gibson loved him.
They were very close.
They were very close. They were pranksters. They took pictures with them holding hands, and he got fined. Bing Devine hated it. Hated Uecker because, he liked Uecker as a player, but he hated his antics. And there were pictures of him holding hands with Gibson. He just had a soft spot for Uecker. Uecker was fantastic. I don't know if he played at all. I don't even know if he caught Barney Schultz in the World Series when the knuckleball pitcher when Mantle hit that homer in Game 4. Game 3 at Yankee Stadium. But he was on the team, and Mr. Belvedere, this TV show he was on, that was a recreation of an old 50s sitcom for about 4 movie episodes, Clifton Webb, which are hilarious. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure on the movie channel tonight they will show broadcasts of Mr. Belvedere goes back to college, Mr. Belvedere does this, and that's what it was. It was an old 50s. It was very good, the movies. It was about 4 or 5 of them, like the Thin Man series. So it was like that. But he was fantastic. He was an actor. He was and you're right. His best, if you ask me, next to Rodney Dangerfield and maybe Joan Rivers. Rodney Dangerfield, Joan Rivers, I'll put Uecker number 3 with Johnny Carson. They were fantastic together. Yeah. Johnny Carson loved Uecker, and Uecker, he deadpanned his whole way with the baseball antics and all. They were great. Was kind of comedy. You can't get it anymore, Michael. You can't even see it anymore. Michael, thank you for the time.
You got it. He was so special with Carson that he was on over 100 times. And when Johnny had you on that many times, he loved you. And he loved Uecker. You could just see. He would he would genuinely laugh. He wasn't laughing because he was a host and he was trying to move it along. He laughed because he was dying inside at the stuff that Uecker was saying and the way that Uecker said it and the deadpan delivery and the timing, which was exquisite. I mean, he might have been a 200 hitter, and it was actually 199.7, but he always said 199.7. He didn't say 200. In the Baseball Encyclopedia, it's rounded up to 200 because that makes it funnier that he was under 200. He might have been that player, but he had a World Series ring. He had 54 years as a voice of a team and was absolutely beloved by a region of the country and by the players of which he announced. Just amazing. We'll talk to Brian Anderson, the television voice of the Milwaukee Brewers, coming up in the next hour, as well as Buster Olney. So stick around for us. We've got so much more to do. But first off, I'll tell you, hey, this is Michael K. Not sleeping well? Well, it could be your mattress. And I'm here to tell you that my friends at PC Richard & Son use a 4-step mattress fitting process to make sure your new bed fits you perfectly. Right now, save big on Sealy, Tempur-Pedic, and Stearns & Foster, and you get $300 cash back instantly to use on anything else in the store. So do what I do. Get to PC Richard & Son, local company you can trust for your new mattress.
Thanks for listening to the Michael K. Show podcast.
You know what? Check yourself.
Hear more from Michael K. weekdays at 1 on 880 ESPN.
Suck it up and like it.
The ESPN New York app and your smart speakers.
Welcome to the Chevy Lightning Round. Guess the clues to win. First team, you're up.
Powerful, commanding, unstoppable.
Silverado.
Adventurous, fun, techie.
Trailblazer.
Stylish, nimble.
Trax.
Innovative, electric.
Blazer EV. Lightning Round champions. You've guessed all the right Chevy clues.
Wherever the year takes you, explore it together in the Chevy of your choice. See your New Mexico Chevy dealer.
Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
This is the Michael K. Show podcast.
I gotta get more K.
Listen live weekdays at 1 on 880 ESPN, the ESPN New York app, and your smart speaker.
The show, everybody. Hour 2 of our 2-hour radio program. And we leave you at 3 o'clock. It's going to be Don, Hahn, and Rosenberg. And Alan Hahn is back with Don. So please tune in for that. I'm sure they'll have a lot of stuff to talk about. And that'll be from 3 to 7. And it'll be a great, great show, as it always is. 1-800-919-3776. He's back. He's back. I don't mean Alan. I mean Aaron Rodgers, Aaron. He was on the Pat McAfee show. Now Mike McCarthy, his former coach with the Green Bay Packers, let go by the Cowboys, being interviewed by teams, but strangely enough, not with the Jets. And that's something that we definitely have to dive into tomorrow. We're going to do a lot on a Football Friday with those 4 great games, but why have the Jets, who have interviewed everybody in the Manhattan phone book, but they haven't interviewed Mike McCarthy? Well, why not? You've interviewed everybody. Why not request an interview with Mike McCarthy? They did interview Arthur Smith, and we'll see how that works out. Didn't do well as the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, but he is a very good offensive mind. Anyway, Aaron Rodgers talked about his former Green Bay coach, Mike McCarthy.
Hell of a ball coach. What he did this year with the amount of injuries that they had, I thought was amazing. Hearing the guys talk about him, I wasn't surprised, just because anybody that plays for Mike and gets to know him a little bit and get to feel that great big heart that he's got, it's special. So, it was interesting because anybody that knows the business, most of the time coaches have an extra year on their deal, right? So it gives you that buffer. If you get released, you have a year to kind of not have to rush back in there. All these guys, I think most of the coaches on the staff went into the season without another year on their deal. They're in their last year of their deal. That's a freaking tough way to go about doing it with no guarantees afterwards.
I understand what Aaron's saying, but I don't understand why people need to have that extra year. If you do well, Aaron Boone is going into the final year of his contract. A lot of people go into the final year of their contract. If you perform well, you're going to get another deal. And whether or not you have a year left or not, all that the year left does is give you a gold watch. Because they don't want to get rid of you, they get rid of you. I mean, Gerard Mayo had many years left on his contract. They fired him. That money is nothing. Nothing. So all you're asking for is a nice gold safety net. So I don't quite agree that you have to have that second year so that you're not a lame duck. It's nice. It maybe tells the players that you're going to be around, but it doesn't really tell them that because owners are willing to eat that money. Question that the McAfee guys had with Rodgers, who did you talk to before you left New York?
Met with Woody, met with Christopher and Jaime and Coach Ulbrich, and everybody there had a lot of nice conversations. Gave some constructive things. There's so much that goes into the whole thing. There's the food part, there's the locker room, there's travel, there's hotel stuff. There's different, you're just giving little constructive things here and there that maybe they take to heart, maybe they don't. But I think there's always ways to improve, and I was impressed to see that the meeting with Christopher and Jaime was a lot about that. The meeting about Woody was more about team, future, different things. But I think everybody understands that it's going to come down to a GM and a coach and myself, and whether we all want to do a dance together or if it's not in the cards.
A lot of people were assuming that there was a chance that Aaron Rodgers wouldn't play in 2025, and I never felt like that. And the way he finished in the last game where he had the 4 touchdowns, I think he wants to come back. Now, whether he wants to come back with the Jets, I think it's more, do the Jets want him back? There's so many salary cap implications, and the fact that he did speak with Woody and that there was not a definitive resolution of whether or not he was going to come or go leaves the door open. I mean, you could look at it if you're the guy who gets the GM job or the head coaching job and go, well, what's better out there? We're not bringing back Sam Darnold. I know we have Tyrod Taylor. Do we think that's better than having Aaron Rodgers at the age of 41? I think there's a real good chance that he comes back to the Jets. I really do. And I think there's almost a level of certitude on my part that he's going to play again. Now, the only way he wouldn't play again is if there's not one team that has interest in him. And I would find that hard to believe. Although I thought there'd be teams that were interested in Bill Belichick, and there weren't. You know, with Aaron, you've got to weigh what he brings to the table as an athlete, what he brings to the table as a quarterback, and then obviously the extracurricular stuff that would, drive a lot of people nuts. That's what it comes down to. Do you want to put up with the nonsense to get decent quarterback play? I don't think he's the MVP level quarterback that he used to be, but I'd say he's probably middle of the pack, maybe 16 or 17 at this point. But you can make the argument he's middle of the pack, maybe 13 or 14, because he didn't have a terrible year on a team that wasn't great, and after Game 5, a team that wasn't coached. Think about that. It's a team that didn't get coached. Jeff Ulbrich was put in a bad situation. Robert Saleh should have coached out the year, and now you're hearing that Saleh might be the favorite to get the Jaguar job. But he's going to interview with the Dallas Cowboys as well. So there are people out there that see what Robert Saleh could possibly do in a stable organization. We shall see. We shall see. 1-800-919-3776. The big story today is that Bob Uecker passed away at the age of 90. An institution in Milwaukee, absolutely beloved more than any player, I believe, that's ever played in Wisconsin. That includes all the great Packers. I truly believe that. He was a special one of one. He was funny like a comedian. He was a great broadcaster when you even got past the laughs. He made you feel comfortable every time you were around him. He was beloved by the players, which is very, very rare. Believe me, you talk to broadcasters, and, I've been broadcasting these 33 years, and obviously I was closer to the players when they were closer in age to me than they are now. But, Uecker's 89, 90, and the players embrace him like he's actually the 27th man on the team. And I thought, what a perfect guy to talk to who's had a front row seat for Bob Uecker in Milwaukee, and that is our good friend Brian Anderson. You hear him obviously do NBA games and golf and basketball, and he's a television voice of the Milwaukee Brewers, and he's nice enough to join us now. Brian, the first thing I want to say is my condolences to you, because obviously you lost somebody that was close to you. How are you doing today?
Yeah, man, I appreciate that, and thanks for having me on. I think it's helpful to be able to share, especially with people like you and your audience, and great sports fans, and there's a piece of Bob Uecker in all of us. Whether we know it or not, there's not a person probably listening to your show right now that can't throw out a few of those lines from those Miller commercials, and you saying I was in the front row. That just immediately reminds me of must be in the front row, and I'm good, man. I feel honored to have been in his presence, and I worked with him for 18 years. We never did games together. He did radio, I did TV, but he would often come over to the television side, and we would call games, and it was always so easy. And I used to always just say to myself, man, I would just love to do a season with him, or a whole game even. But my sadness is for Brewers fans, and I mean that in a kind of a different way, because when you have a voice that you lose like Bob Uecker's, it's not just that you have this announcer that you like. It's different than that, especially in Wisconsin, because Bob mostly played it straight on the broadcast and called the games properly, and he was funny, but he called the games in a proper way. And in baseball especially, and especially in Wisconsin in the summer, there's a connection to your family, your mother, your father, your siblings, being out on the lake. Summers are great in Wisconsin. We live for those summers. And Bob's voice is kind of that thread through that. So there's when I get emotional about it, it's when I think about all of those individuals. A lot of them have texted me today or called me today that grew up with Bob, and it's just like that's a piece of their past as well. And it's bigger than just an announcer, just a sports announcer. We're going to see all the clips and all the comedic moments, and he was a comedic genius, and all the Johnny Carson. It just all lives right there on YouTube. You can go fire that up, and it's all over the place today. But it really, for people in Wisconsin, man, it's just way deeper than that. It's just a connection to your your whole life if you're of a certain age, because he started in 1971.
Right.
And I mean, he started the year I was born, and he was still doing it up till the last game of this season in the playoffs. So it's an amazing run. And it would be an amazing run if it was just that, if it was just an announcer making that run. But then it was so much more than that, it's hard to wrap your arms around what a life he lived.
You know, Brian, the one thing that always struck me is, you know, I didn't get to spend a lot of time with him. You know, the Yankees would see the Brewers every other year or something like that. And I would walk in and I'd say hello, and he would make you feel like you were his best friend, like he really knew you. You know, you'd introduce, I know who you are, you know, stuff like that. And I'm just wondering, Brian, when you got there, you were not BA yet. You were not the national voice that you are now. How did he treat you when you first came into the booth?
That's so funny because you, when you say, I know who you are, that was one of his bits. Every day of his life, multiple people a day would come into Bob Uecker's world and introduce themselves and layer up their introduction, you know, just like you did. I did the same. Hey, I'm Brian Anderson. I'm the new announcer. You know, you always put the caveats in it. He would never let you get to the end of those explainers or those defining pieces to what you think is going to help you or help him understand you better. He would cut everybody off. I don't care who you are, you know. So he would always do that. Just he did that with everybody, and the fact that you just imitated him there just made me chuckle there because I've seen it thousands of times. But you know, he was very instrumental in helping me get the job, and I didn't know him, and he didn't know me, but we had a mutual friend that he played golf with, and, you know, from my minor league baseball days, and, you know, when you're a minor league announcer, you're searching for every lifeline you can. So when there's a job open, you go through the Rolodex. For those of a certain age, you know what a Rolodex is, but you go through every name you have, like, who could possibly help me with this job? You know, I was turned down by so many teams and so many places that I reached out to this guy. His name was Murray Burnett, and Murray Burnett was a really good friend of Bob Uecker, and I said, hey, could you just please have Bob at least mention my name? And I never knew this until years later, but he did, and he never wanted to have his name attached to mine. He always said in case I was terrible, and he always told me I wasn't able to tell the story, but I can now. But basically, he was the one who called the Brewers and said, I don't know this guy, this young announcer, but just give him a listen because a good friend of mine vouches for him. And they did, and they literally pulled my demo out of the no file, the file of tapes that weren't, you know, because I had no major league experience, and that was kind of the parameters of the job. So that was the first layer of this. It's taken a minute, but then I got the job, and I was really eager to thank him and hug him, but he wouldn't have it. Like I would go in his booth. He was very cordial, but it was always standoffish. And for about 6 weeks, we had very little interaction, very little. And I was nervous. I was scared to death of him. I was asking everybody, how do I unlock this Bob Uecker dynamic? And everybody just said, he'll come to you when he's ready to know you. Wow. And when he's ready for you to know him. And that came our first road trip. We went to Miami, and we had a day off, and he grabbed me by the pants, and he said, I was walking by him, and he grabbed me, and he said, hey, you a golfer, right? I said, yeah. He goes, why don't you set something up for us tomorrow? And I did. And so that's kind of how I really got to know him. And we spent the first 9 holes. It was a full Bob Uecker, this is how you exist in my world and our world. And then the last 9 holes, we took on the 2 guys we were playing, and we beat them. And ever since then, we were great friends, and he was a great mentor, and but he never talked broadcasting with me. You know, Michael, you and I, we talk mechanics and broadcasting all the time. We all do. Mm-hmm. Bob wasn't like that. He didn't think of himself as a broadcaster. He thought of himself as a player that just happened to do this job. And so we never really had those conversations, but yeah, man, it's just I'm so lucky to know him and just be on the bus with him. Those 4:00 bus rides, I always say, was like the greatest 20 minutes, 30 minutes you could ever spend anywhere at any place. And it was free because Bob Uecker held court all those years. We get on that 4:00 bus, we go to the ballpark, and it was probably 4 or 5 of us max, always. And it was full. It was his stage. And even one point, he jumped the driver's seat of the bus and backed the bus down the ramp in Houston, which is like one of the trickiest ramps to navigate. And he backed that thing down because everybody said he couldn't do it. He was 80 years old when he did that. And he backed the bus down like, a 9-point delivery to that bus with millionaires all over in that bus. and he perfectly parked the giant bus. So it's like all these things he did. And there's so many stories just like that, man. What a treasure.
Now, you also got a real good view, and I was talking about it before you came on, Brian. There's always a little bit of a separation of church and state between broadcasters and players, because sometimes you have to say somebody is 1 for 45, and they don't like that, and their wife doesn't like that, and the way it's relayed to them, it sounds even worse than what you said. But he was really the 27th man on the Brewers. When they celebrate anything, it's just amazing. He would be in the middle of it. And Bob Costas was on with us in the first hour, Brian, and he said that the Brewers actually voted him a full share. I mean, it's unbelievable. I don't know if that's ever going to happen again, Brian.
No, it'll never happen. And the other part of that story is the full share story and that was a regular occurrence, by the way. And Bob, another thing that he prohibited us from talking about, but Bob turned around and immediately donated that full share to Make-A-Wish and other charitable causes. And he always had Make-A-Wish kids around him, at different levels. I mean, they were there. He did that for years, and nobody ever knew about this. And we were all sworn to never talk about it. And so, that's another layer of Bob that I always respected and appreciated, that he did fishing outings with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, people who would donate, and then the kids who, were part of that. He did all kind of stuff. And that was part of the share. That was part of the share story that people only knew about the full share, but he had a locker in the locker room. It's another thing people don't know. He had a locker as of last year in the locker room. He was always the first one at the ballpark. He swam in the zero gravity pool there that they had, and he trained. He was very fit, and he was really serious about his fitness. He was an excellent swimmer, and he did that a lot. And so he worked with the athletic trainers and the physical therapist for years. He used to throw batting practice up until his 60s. So he always had a locker. He was always part of the team, and he dressed down there. He put his briefcase down there. He didn't have an office. He had a locker in the clubhouse, in the main clubhouse, even as a 90-year-old last year. He was truly part of the team. And that celebration this year, Pat Murphy, there's a famous clip out there of the words that he shared. But I walked down with Bob, and I never went in the locker rooms for the celebrations. I just never felt like that was a place for me. And, that was the players' place. And, Bob, that was different for him. They pulled him in, and they waited for him. They waited till he signed off, which in real time was about, how radio announcers are. They've got to do their rap, and they've got to do an interview. It's not right away. Every other team in baseball, 29 other teams, would have done it right away, and you would have walked in on the celebration. For Bob, they waited probably 20 minutes. And so I was with him. We walked down. He turned left in the clubhouse. He goes, well, looks like I'm going to have a dry cleaning bill here. And that was always the case. And that was what was so special about him. And what I would say to that too is, like, as a broadcaster, his gift was he took all those relationships, and he was the portal for the fans to know all those people. We want to say the most as broadcasters. The thing we love to say when we're doing a game is, I spoke to Aaron Judge before the game. I spoke to so-and-so. Bob did that every day. And he was the one that could bring those players and those subjects to the audience every single day. He was the portal, and he delivered that every day. And, to think about that, for 6 decades, he was part of the sound of summer. You just turn on the radio and he's there, and he was delivering all these moments and these I spoke to moments. You were able to eavesdrop and hear these conversations, the ones he was willing to share, believe me, there were a lot that he didn't share, but there was enough nuggets there that he did share on the air that, you were inside, you were eavesdropping through Bob, and you were part of the family. And that's why he has such an incredible place that'll never be matched in the game ever.
Well, Brian, we thank you for sharing. Obviously, my condolences to you because all of Milwaukee lost kind of a member of their family. So I thank you for taking the time to share with us.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Great to be with you, man. Appreciate you.
That's Brian Anderson. He's the best. You hear him on TNT with the NBA and golf and during March Madness. And I'll tell you, I didn't want to say while Brian was still on, but one of the nicest things about going into Milwaukee was you got to talk with Uecker and you got to hang with Brian Anderson. Brian Anderson is one of the true gentlemen in all of broadcasting. There's not he's on the level of my friend Mike Breen, where I don't think you find anybody that has a bad word to say about Brian. They call him BA, and he's a terrific dude, and those are some great memories from him about the late Bob Uecker, so rest in peace to Uecker. Hey, if you're able, please help people affected by the California wildfires in 2025. Donate at redcross.org/ESPN to help the Red Cross respond and help people recover. Coming up, Buster Olney will join us here on the K Show on 880 ESPN. Hey, maybe the autumn, but every season is Bigelow tea season. I'm picky about what I drink, especially on days that I have a show. One of the first things I do each day is reach for a mug full of Bigelow tea. I love the different flavor options, and it's perfect for someone who makes his living behind a microphone. Want to know what keeps me going? Look no further than my cup of Bigelow tea next to me in the studio. So grab a mug full of your favorite Bigelow tea and tea proudly. Bigelow tea, the official hot tea of the New York Yankees.
Harry Douglas here, and if you're constantly on the go like I am, then earbuds are a priority. That's why you need Technique's new noise-canceling AZ80s. Like you, these buds work as hard as they play. You'll get Technique's legendary high-res audio, along with state-of-the-art noise cancellation, so you can stay in your zone. Visit us.techniques.com/sports to shop for AZ80s now. That's us.technics.com/sports.
So it's a new year, 2025, and you're thinking, how am I going to make this year different? How am I going to build something for myself? The best time to start your new business is right now, and Shopify is how you're going to make it happen. Shopify makes it simple to create your brand, open for business, and get your first sale. Get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates. No coding or design skills required. All you need to do is drag and drop. Their powerful social media tools let you connect all your channels and create shoppable posts and help you sell everywhere people scroll. Shopify makes it easy to manage your growing business. They help with the details like shipping, taxes, and payments from one single dashboard, allowing you to focus on the important stuff, like growing your business. What happens if you don't act now? Will you regret it? What if someone beats you to the idea? Don't kick yourself when you hear this again in a year because you didn't do anything now. With Shopify, your first sale is closer than you think. Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/network, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/network to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/network. Grainger knows space at your facility is limited. As a maintenance specialist, you only have so many spots for backup products in your inventory roster, which means space on your bench comes at a premium. Well, when it comes to breadth and depth, Grainger's got you covered. They've got over 1 million industrial-grade products. Plus, fast delivery helps reduce the inventory you need to keep on hand, freeing up space and capital while giving your operation a winning edge. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by a local branch.
Thanks for listening to the Michael K. Show podcast.
He's been here a long time, and he's going to be here even longer.
Catch the show on demand whenever you want. Just subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, if you're able, please help people affected by the California wildfires in 2025. Donate at redcross.org/ESPN to help the Red Cross respond and help people recover. Now, we just heard from Brian Anderson. And before that, in the 1 o'clock hour from Bob Costas, and I'm just texting with Brian during the commercials, and he told me a story that he didn't get a chance to tell on the air. And he said, nobody really knows this. He said, but Bob Uecker was very close to becoming the Yankee announcer a few times. George Steinbrenner made him an offer, and he cleared it through Bud Selig, who was the owner of the Brewers at the time. And then Uecker ultimately declined because he was Milwaukee through and through. So it was Selig that told Brian Anderson that story when Brian was starting to do more national games, and Bob confirmed it to to Brian, and made sure that Brian didn't leave Milwaukee either. So how amazing how life would have been different for Yankee fans if they had Bob Uecker. So George Steinbrenner could see what a brilliant broadcaster and entertainer that Uecker was, and made him an offer. And I guess it was a possibility for a little bit, but then Uecker ultimately turned it down. So many things going on in baseball, despite the hot stove being a little bit cold. You know, we spent so much of yesterday talking about Pete Alonso, and I said, got to get Buster on the air to find out what he's hearing. And Buster Only, our friend and colleague, joins us now on the K Show. Buster, how you doing, my friend?
Well, sad like a lot of people in baseball because of Bob Uecker. I didn't know him that well, just to say hi. I was texting with Craig Counsell, the longtime Brewers manager, who, of course, grew up in Wisconsin, and he was saying about how, he met Uecker when he was 10 years old, and he said the best half hour of every day was the time he got to spend with Uecker. I mean, he's just so beloved within the sport, which is pretty remarkable considering the fact he wasn't a star as a player. You know this, and that story you just told, that's amazing. How could that have affected your trajectory, Michael?
And John Sterling, so many people's trajectory. I never knew it. I never knew.
That is unbelievable that's the case. But I would say this about the hot stove. It is heating up. It is definitely percolating now.
Now, I saw something that you tweeted out just moments before we got you on the air, that the Mets really are serious about trying to acquire Vlad Guerrero, right?
Yeah, and you're trying to figure out how this all fits, right? And it's pretty clear the trajectory of the Mets is with Pete Alonso. Like, look, we, especially owner Steve Cohen, from what I've heard, he loves Alonso. He wants to retain him. They made the $158 million offer in 2023. Pete turned it down. It looks like it's a major mistake. The two sides, Pete's side and the Mets, have agreed, and any deal moving forward would be on a 3-year deal if it happened, but they're not agreeing on the salary. And I think after the Jesse Winker trade, I reached out to a source and said, does this really mean that the Mets are preparing to move on past Alonso? And he said it's trending that way. And, one of the interesting, as David Stearns, in his time as head of baseball operations for the Brewers, he made it pretty clear that, he was not going to overpay for the big power, big swing and miss first baseman. Chris Carter led the National League in home runs, and he non-tendered him. Well, Pete is that type of first baseman. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., on the other hand, he's a power hitter who hits for average. Last year, 199 hits, 96 strikeouts. As you know, he's a free agent after next year. And there are other teams kind of circling around the Blue Jays, wondering if at some point the Blue Jays, who've been desperate to get an anchor star, would consider trading him because their conversations about a multi-year deal have gone nowhere to this point. They're far apart. And goodness, when you think about it, it all kind of makes sense because the Blue Jays now, reportedly are in conversations with Alonso. But they could pivot and, pay a Pete Alonso or an Alex Bregman to be the signature star. And then at that point, maybe they move on past Vladdy and they're willing to trade him. And the Mets, from what I'm told, really want Vladdy. Can you imagine Soto and Vladimir Guerrero Jr., both in their mid-20s, those two guys going back-to-back as two great power hitters who don't strike out very much? It would be dynamic.
I'll tell you what, Buster, if they traded Vladdy, you could look at this offseason for the Toronto Blue Jays and say it's just abysmal. They haven't been able to give away their money, and I was told by a pretty good source that they were willing to outbid the Mets for Soto, but they just can't get anybody to take their money, and then they're going to trade away probably their most visible star. I don't know how that fan base is going to react.
Well, at some point, though, I think what's happened in recent off seasons is that the Blue Jays front office hasn't gotten, a grip on reality. They are clearly in a situation now where in 2025 they're not poised to contend, with the Yankees team that won the American League last year, with a Red Sox team that's clearly getting better, with the Orioles who've had a disappointing offseason but still really talented. And I know from talking with folks with other teams, they've been watching the Blue Jays saying, you know what, at some point you got to deal with reality here. And the reality is, they're not close to signing Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to a long-term deal. And if he's not going to sign, then they're in the same position the Red Sox were, in their minds with Mookie Betts. Then you got to probably, to get value for him, think about trading him. And now would be the best time to trade, as you know. Trade position players is in the offseason and not during the season, because during the season it's a very specialized market. It's a very limited market. If they're going to trade him, now would be the time to do it, to pivot. And, again, if they're looking for a signature star going forward, maybe that helps free up money for Bregman, for Pete Alonso, whatever. But at some point, the Blue Jays seem to be coming to a crossroad and a decision of what they're going to do with Vladdy.
It is fascinating, though, on the Mets side. I mean, would you be willing to give up a king's ransom to Toronto for Vlad when you could outbid everybody and their mother after the 2025 season when he becomes a free agent? I mean, the Yankees knew with Soto, there was going to be a lot of bidding for him, but nobody's going to outbid Steve Cohen for anybody that he wants. So how much would the Mets be willing to give up to Toronto just to get that extra year of Vlad?
And they've done that before with Francisco Lindor, right?
Yes.
And when they made the trade with Cleveland, that's exactly what they did, despite the fact folks with other teams, their feeling was, why would you trade for the player now and then pay him big money in before he became a free agent? That's exactly what they did with Lindor. Maybe it's to get access to the player. Maybe it's a case where Steve Cohen, as the richest owner of baseball, can go, I don't care. And I think we got to remember this. The Mookie Betts trade demonstrated pretty clearly that you can get a really good player a year from free agency without necessarily giving up everything. The price for Juan Soto was high. You would assume that the price for Vladdy wouldn't be quite as high, but the Mets have this surplus of position player prospects, which happens to be exactly what the Blue Jays need. Their farm system is thinned out. They need names. They need volume. That's what the Mets have at the top of their farm system.
Yeah, really fascinating stuff. Now, we mentioned this about the Yankees yesterday. I want to hear if you're hearing anything. So it came out the other day that Brian Hayes is asking the Pirates to trade him. I think that's a perfect talent for the Yankees to slide into third base, eminently affordable on a long-term deal. Is there any traction there? Will the Pirates accede to his demands?
Well, remember, they had a similar situation with their outfielder Brian Reynolds, where there'd been a story that his preference was to be traded, and they eventually worked out a long-term contract, or they settled that situation. With Hayes, I think one of the questions within the industry about him is how often he's gotten hurt, but he's really valued, especially as an elite defensive third baseman. And I agree with you; he'd be a great fit for the Yankees. The question is, if you put a player that young and that dynamic out in the marketplace, could the Yankees, who did not have a good year with their farm system, be able to compete for, to make a Hayes trade? When it came to Garrett Crochet, they were never really in the conversation. The White Sox basically looked at the Yankee farm system and how guys were performing during last season, and the White Sox weren't interested in talking to them. I guess the question would be whether or not the Pirates would see more value among the players the Yankees might talk about.
Going back to Guerrero, I've heard in different stories that I've read that he's looking for a contract that starts with a $400 million over 10 years. Is that fairly accurate?
Okay, so I don't know exactly what he turned down, but I was told that the Blue Jays were aggressive, that there was something probably in the mid-300 range, and that they were told that's not even close. Okay.
Wow.
One general manager had a great observation a couple of weeks ago to me. He said, with Ohtani last winter and with Soto this winter, we have normalized $400 million contracts. Like, that's becoming like, oh, yeah, you can get $400 million. And this general manager said to me, there are not a lot of teams out there that could actually entertain that type of contract. Well, guess which team could?
Right.
The New York Mets are probably in the position where they could pay one guy, whatever the total value, including the perks for Soto would be, $55 million. Maybe it's evaluated at some point. They could be the one team that could pay two players $100 million and not blink.
Isn't this amazing, though, Buster? In a period of about 2 years, the Aaron Judge contract is an absolute steal for the Yankees.
I know. Well, think about even more so the contract that Shohei Ohtani signed for $700 million with most of it deferred. As you know, $680 million deferred 10 years from now looks like a disaster.
Yeah, unbelievable.
1 year.
Where's Santander going to land?
So it's clear that, he's dealing with the same dynamic, I think, that Pete is to some degree, that people, they love the power, but there's concern about the defense. They're concerned about how the player is going to age, what other skills are out there. The Blue Jays, as you know, have been connected with them all winter. I do wonder, and I don't know if it would be Santander or maybe Jurickson and Profar, this news we got earlier in the week that the Cincinnati Reds have some extra television money. It wouldn't surprise me to see them sign an outfielder. I don't think they would sign a player as expensive as Santander now, but I think the Reds are potentially going to be one of the surprise teams this year. And I do think that before we get to spring training, they'll sign at least one more premium player.
Sasaki to the Dodgers or the Padres? What do you think?
My guess is he's going to go to the Dodgers because the Dodgers seem to get everybody that they want. I would say this. I asked people who were on these conference calls with him, what's your sense of his personality? And every person I spoke to said he's really quiet, he's really serious, and the takeaway from some of the people who've done background work on him is he really doesn't want the stage. Like Juan Soto is a star. Juan Soto loves the stage. He loves being in the spotlight. Their perception of Sasaki at 23, still a young guy, still evolving as a person, is that he doesn't necessarily want that. And the way that's being interpreted by the teams that we're talking to him is he either wants to be in a small market where he doesn't have to deal with idiots like me, or he wants to be like the 8th or 9th biggest star on a team, and that would obviously be the Dodgers. My guess is that the Dodgers get him, but, Padres, A.J. Preller, he's really inventive. And I can tell you this, so many of the teams that I've spoken to who are involved in this believe that the decision about where he's going to go was made weeks ago, and they're just waiting to hear what it is.
Yeah, it's become an episode of The Bachelor. He's handing out red roses and stuff like that. Just eliminating teams. It's weird the way he's doing it. It really is. Yesterday was the first day that he could be signed, right?
Yep, that's right.
He's got a week to go.
And so, well, right. And we would expect, if we heard later today, if we heard tomorrow, we heard over the weekend that he picked a team, that's not going to be a surprise. It's imminent. And he's viewed as a significant talent, tall, great athlete, looks like a guy who's going to be able to adapt. I did have one evaluator tell me he thinks that he might have to start the year in the minor leagues just as he gets acclimated to Major League Baseball.
Talking with Buster Only, our friend here on the Michael K. Show. Final thing, I keep saying this on the air, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating it to our consistent listeners, but with the Yankees saying that they're content to go with DJ LeMahieu or a combination of Oswaldo Cabrera at third base, it reminds me of Bubba Crosby. Do you think the Yankees are going to go into the season with those two at third base?
I think when opening day happens, they'll have somebody else. Do I think that they're sitting here today saying, if that's where we land, then we'll be okay with that? I think that's the case because they've done a lot of other really great stuff this offseason. I think they put themselves in a better position. But I do think as time goes on and we get into spring training and teams maybe have some club has to shed money, some club have to move a contract, maybe Nolan Arenado changes. I don't know. I do think that something else will develop between now and opening day, and they're going to find a better alternative.
One final thing. What do you think Alonso's looking for? Because, again, that 3-year deal that he and the Mets have agreed on the parameters of that, I'm thinking Scott probably wants over $40 million a year. The Mets are probably in the mid-20s, right?
Your guess is close to where I am. I don't know exactly what what the Mets are comfortable with or what exactly he's asking for, but it's got to be north of $30 million, right? Considering what he turned down, the deal in 2023, what the total value was, and from what I understand, they're pretty far apart in terms of what what the player's looking for and what the team is willing to pay.
Amazing. Great stuff, Buster. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Michael.
You got it. That's Buster Olney. Good stuff from him. So it looks like a real possibility that the Mets might be able to do something for Guerrero. And if they do, then that opens up first base in Toronto for Alonso. Fascinating stuff going on right now. Hey, if you're able, please help people affected by the California wildfires in 2025. Donate at redcross.org/ESPN to help the Red Cross respond and help people recover. It's K and U. We'll finish it up with your phone calls, 1-800-919-3776, right here on 880 ESPN.
TaxAct can think of a million things more fun than filing taxes. TaxAct is going to name some now. Sitting in traffic. Folding a fitted bedsheet. Listening to your coworker talk about his fantasy team. Digging a hole. Digging an even larger hole next to that original hole. Unfortunately, TaxAct's filing software can't make taxes fun. But TaxAct can help you get them done. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
There's one thing that will forever change the way you sleep, and it's the softest 100% organic cotton sheets from Boll & Branch. You'll fall asleep faster, wrapped in the most luxurious comfort. You'll never sleep hot again, with sheets that feel breathable to sleep in. You'll experience the purest softness on night one, and feel your sheets get even softer with every wash. Discover the difference with 15% off your first set of sheets at bollandbranch.com with code SPORTS15. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
Bombas makes the most comfortable socks, underwear, and T-shirts.
Warning, Bombas are so absurdly comfortable you may throw out all your other clothes.
Sorry, do we legally have to say that?
No, this is just how I talk, and I really love my Bombas.
They do feel that good. And they do good, too. One item purchased equals one item donated.
To feel good and do good, go to bombas.com/ESPNpod and use code ESPNpod for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/ESPNpod and use code ESPNpod at checkout.
Thanks for listening to the Michael K. Show podcast.
He's been here a long time, and he's going to be here even longer.
Catch the show on demand whenever you want. Just subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts.
I'll tell you what, the stuff with Buster Olney is fascinating. You know, especially the real possibility, it seems like, that the Mets have a chance to get Guerrero before the season even begins, rather than wait another year till he becomes a free agent. But, I've heard so many different angles on the Alonso thing. You know, why would you alienate a homegrown guy? Listen, this is the big bad business world. Pete Alonso made a terrible mistake turning down $158 million for 7 years 2 years ago. Now he's 2 years older, coming off a bad year. And I wonder how many Met fans out there, be honest with yourself, would feel the same way if he didn't have that home run against Devin Williams. Because he had a miserable season. You know, some guys have great walk years. Aaron Judge hit 62 home runs in his walk year. How'd that work out? Juan Soto helped power the Yankees to play in the World Series. Was tremendous. How'd that work out? Pete didn't play well in his walk year. And his numbers are trending somewhat downward on OPS and WAR and things like that. So if you're a team and it's a big business, it's a big boys world, you're going to capitulate on a contract that you don't think the guy is worth just because the fans like him? That's a dumb way to do business. I think the Mets are doing the right thing. I said this yesterday. They're probably offering about 3 years, $75 million. Probably could push it up to 80, something like that. And Nolan Scott, he probably wants 3 years, 120. Why would the Mets do it? That's $40 million a year for 3 years. If you could get Vlad Guerrero, who he could probably sign for 10 years at $400 million, who's the better player for you? The better player is Vlad. So sometimes you overplay your hand, and that was a business move by Pete, right? So if he wanted to really be with the Mets, 7 years, 158 is certainly not something that he'd be holding a telethon for. He could have taken that. So now you're saying the flip side doesn't apply. So the Mets have kind of had a come to Jesus moment, and they don't think he's worth that. Not at the age of 30, not coming off a subpar year. So they're supposed to give in? I think they're doing the right thing. And the fans, you know what? I'm sorry. If you love the guy, I'm sorry. He loves you, I'm sorry. But he had a chance to stay here for 7 years at 158, and he turned it down. You going to blame the Mets on that? Now, we talked about the home run against Devin Williams. That turned out to be, one of the last big moments that Bob Uecker was ever on the mic for, and ended the Milwaukee Brewers season and ended, essentially, Bob Uecker's broadcasting career. And here's what Bob said at the end of that game.
Well, New York, down, they did it. And the crew will have it end here tonight.
Really a crushing end to what was a fabulous season for the Milwaukee Brewers.
I'm telling you, that one had some sting on it.
It's so sad, especially when we heard Bob Costas say that Uecker probably knew that was going to be the last game he ever did, that this was going to be the last season he ever did because he was battling small cell lung cancer. So those words really reverberate differently when you know that he probably knew that was the last game that he was ever going to do in his illustrious career. So rest in peace to Bob Uecker, one of a kind. One of one for sure. What a life, what a great American life, a life well lived. Rest in peace, my friend. Coming up, Don Hahn and Rosenberg here on 880 ESPN.
Thanks for listening to the Michael K. Show podcast.
You know what? Check yourself.
Hear more from Michael K. weekdays at 1 on 880 ESPN.
Suck it up and like it.
The ESPN New York app and your smart speakers.
Welcome to the Chevy Lightning Round. Guess the clues to win. First team, you're up.
Powerful, commanding, unstoppable.
Silverado.
Adventurous, fun, techie.
Trailblazer.
Stylish, nimble.
Trax.
Innovative, electric.
Blazer EV.
Lightning Round champions. You've guessed all the right Chevy clues.
Wherever the year takes you, explore it together in the Chevy of your choice. See your New Mexico Chevy dealer.